What's up guys, I'm Holly and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm giving you my strategy for the 4x4x48 David Goggins challenge, where you run 4 miles every 4 hours for 2 straight days. Last year was my first time doing this challenge, but I felt like I had overall success and I wanted to just share exactly what I did so that if you guys are doing it this year or anytime in the future, you can reference this video. Guys, first I want to clarify, you do not need to be a high-level athlete to do this challenge. In fact, you don't even need to be a runner at all. David Goggins made it pretty clear over the last couple of years that this is entirely about molding the mind, reframing how you look at things that are difficult. And what I mean by that is it is absolutely frustrating the entire time. 12 different times you're gonna have to get yourself out the door right at the moment you don't want to. Right as you start to feel recovered, you've eaten something, you've laid down, maybe your eyes are starting to shut or you've been sleeping 20 minutes, you're up again and you have to go do it again. And that is the point. Can we get past the frustration, the fatigue, the weird nutrition details, which I'll talk about, to get ourselves out the door no matter what 12 times in a row? And that is the main point of this challenge. So what I'm gonna be doing is addressing 2 groups of people here today. The first group of people we'll call the runners. You guys are not really concerned with the 4-mile part of this challenge, the distance. You work out a couple times a week at least, you're probably getting 10+ miles in a week at least, easily, a lot of you, and you're not really worried about the distance. You're more focused on the fact that you need to manage nutrition, hydration, sleep, and recovery mobility work around 12 separate runs. So you're trying to focus on, how do I make the first run feel similar to the last run? Can I keep steady the whole time and take care of myself well enough? The second group of people aren't running in this challenge. You guys might be walking, or like David suggested last year, you might be doing push-ups for the time it would take the runners to run. Burpees, squats, something that you're gonna give yourself the same movement each time, and you're gonna work for that period of time, doing what you can, accumulating, and you take that same rest that the runners are. Both of you guys are gonna be addressing in this, but I wanna be clear that this video isn't gonna make you fit in 1 month, say that the challenge happens in March again like it did last year. This isn't about that. This is about, can you get prepared mentally and on schedule to know what's to come, to practice what it's like to run on no sleep, to feel a little weird that you ate 1 hour before and then you're getting back out there for another run. All that stuff is what you wanna be aware of before you start, because that's gonna be what actually keeps you going through the 2 days. As for a fun little background, I'll kind of explain how I did this challenge last year. I actually flew to the West Coast for it, and I picked this stretch of a little running path that I love along the beach. I know it very well. I knew I was gonna feel safe there, and I knew the course. It was pretty much dead flat, besides running down from my hotel and then running back up to the hotel. Speaking of that, I was very, very close, so I never had to drive or park for any of the runs. Definitely consider that if you're traveling for this race, you wanna be not spending time on things you don't need to be spending time on. Next thing I did was, the day before, I made sure I went to the grocery store and got everything I could possibly think of that I know sits well with me when I run. So if you are running this challenge, you know yourself already. What can you handle in your stomach and what can't you? I would say that I initially thought I might be eating real meals, every so often, try to keep consistent with breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then eat snacks in between. It did not work for me. I just didn't get enough time to actually digest when I did that. So I really stuck to basic stuff. PB&J, some pretzels, bars, gels occasionally, my salt tubes that I use to make sure I don't cramp, and then just a ton of water. If you're someone who doesn't typically run for longer than an hour at a time, you may never have had to run immediately after taking a couple bites of something. In this challenge, there are gonna be times where you have to do that. And I say this because I really, really thought my nutrition would operate normally through this. It really didn't. There were times when I'd come back from a run, especially in the middle of the night, exhausted, didn't want anything to eat. So I would actually wait until right before, when we were getting ready for the next one, to have a couple bites of something. So you wanna know what that food is. Everybody is different. So what I would suggest is, over the next couple of weeks or leading up to the challenge, take some bites of something with you on your run, even if it's short, just to see how you react to eating and immediately moving. Because we're all different, and if you don't know what those foods are and you just chance it on the challenge, you're gonna be messed up, I promise you that. So don't expect your appetite to be consistent with your normal life. Now, the second piece logistically is gonna be your clothing. If you're traveling, this is a really important piece because you have to pack everything you'll need. But even if you're at home and you have everything, 12 times to run is a lot of clothing. So what I did is I repeated basically 4 to 5 outfits, different pieces, just mixing and matching I will say that it's really frustrating if you are in a hotel room to get everything laid out enough to somewhat dry in between so you're not putting on sweaty clothes over and over again, because that part just adds another element of suffering to it that if you can avoid it, please do. If you're at home, throw things in the dryer if you can, or just get your best sweat wicking stuff ready. With your socks and your shoes, you're gonna wanna make sure you never ever let any of that get wet. If you do let it get wet or you're out in the rain or the snow, you need to make sure you have a really good barrier. That's athletic tape. I have actually a video where I completely talk about the details of my 100-mile race I did, and I talk about how I taped my feet. You want good socks. Merino wool is awesome for keeping the moisture away. You do not want to get a blister early because it's going to be insufferable for the entire challenge, and if it happens early, that just sucks. Now for the ladies, if you're re-wearing sports bras across different runs, you want to consider that over the time and the sweating, you're probably going to get it stretched out a little bit, which might offer less support. So think about that beforehand. That would probably be something you want to prioritize as far as having a lot of them ready to go. But for all of you guys, I highly recommend running in layers no matter what time of day it is. When you go out there, you might feel one way and within half a mile feel very differently. I know when I started to get really fatigued and my body just didn't feel like itself, I'd be freezing, and then within a little bit, I would be sweating so badly. So you don't know how you're gonna feel, and having the ability to adjust if you are doing this outside is always a win. So now I wanna talk about how beat up your body's gonna get through this challenge. I don't care how athletic you are, 12 rounds of this is gonna be a lot on you, and by the third or fourth run, you're gonna start to feel it. If you're doing the burpees, squats, push-ups, whatever it is for the challenge, you're gonna be getting beat up in other ways, probably the upper body, of course. Either way, you're gonna be feeling that volume layer on top of itself, and you're getting minimal amounts of time to recover. So what can you do on the foam roller, on the mobility ball, in between to feel better and feel a little bit more refreshed going back out there? I'm not gonna go all sciencey on you guys, but I wanna be clear that when we use those mobility tools, what we're doing is taking care of the muscle tissue. We're making sure that everything's at its proper length so that it can function most efficiently. When things get tight and short, we start to compensate and build bad habits. Get into the 8th run, the 9th run, all of a sudden you're not running like yourself at all. It's very easy to get injured that way. So a good example of this is I was dealing with calf pain even by like the 3rd run. We were running on pavement and I was really feeling my left calf light up near my Achilles tendon. What I realized is once I did a little scan on my ball and my foam roller, just rolling out the fronts of my shins and then the sides of my calves, I realized how tight the outside of my shin was. When I got that loosened up and I did it repeatedly between runs, all of a sudden I had length in my lower leg to drop my heel and land properly in my running versus staying on the toes, which is what was happening. I was shortening my calf, it was cramping, every single step felt painful. So let that also be a lesson to you guys that any nagging ache or pain that comes up in the beginning, and again, this could be in the upper body if you're doing upper body strength work for your challenge, you have the ability to find those areas that are tight, that are causing those compensations and causing that pain, and work them out in between each time, even just for a few minutes. That's gonna help optimize that muscle tissue, keep it really loose and ready to go so that you're running your best or moving your best throughout the challenge. I was able to get mine under control, and by the 6th round, I think it was, I wasn't even feeling that calf at all. Another thing I really enjoyed doing in between was getting my legs up on the wall, lay on my back, and get that blood coming out of the feet the other direction. If you guys did my recent cool down video, which I'll link here, you can see I really just like this one for keeping the swelling out of the feet and the lower legs. And you'll notice over time in this challenge, especially as your body temperature gets, unregulated in ways, your body is freaking out a little bit. And so you start to get really swollen feet, really swollen ankles. That pressure, that swelling can cause extra pain. So if you can get that going the other way, just get a little blood flow, you'll feel a lot better. So now I'm gonna spell out the timeline of what things looked like from one run to the next, because the first 12 hours, I'll be honest, were pretty hit and miss, trial and error, and I finally found something that worked, but I wanna save you guys that time and hopefully you can just dive right into this pattern and it works for you. Now we started this challenge, when I say we, my best friend did this challenge with me as well. We started at 8 p.m. on Friday, that's when David Goggins was starting it. It tends to be the most miserable way to do it, even if it's not over a weekend, but you've had a full day, no sleep unless you napped, and then you go into it right into the nighttime of running on no sleep, and it's pretty brutal, but that's why he designed this. So that's what we wanted to do and stick to the exact plan. Okay, so we'd go for the 8 p.m. run, take us 40 to 50 minutes, I would say average per run, sometimes less, sometimes more, depending on time of day. We were definitely moving quicker in the mornings when we had that daylight. come back in, and then the first thing, especially if it was the middle of the night, was just try to wind yourself down so that you're able to sleep for a little bit afterwards. The adrenaline's gonna be pumping, so you're gonna wanna do something to just tame the mind, calm down. I would get right on the foam roller and just do a little stretching and a little rolling. From there, sometimes we showered, sometimes we didn't. I liked showering like every 2 to 3 runs. Sometimes I was so dead that I just didn't care. And from there, I would just eat something sort of substantial. That would be probably like the most I would eat. I would say a couple 100 calories if I could. So that after that, put sweats on, get in bed and try to sleep for an hour and a half to 2 hours. My body can process that food. And then when I would get up, I would do a little more stretching, maybe retape my feet and change, but I wouldn't feel the need to eat a bunch right then, maybe a bite or 2 of something. But I would try to do the majority of my eating right after coming in from the run, so I gave myself optimal time to process, digest it. Now with your hydration, you're probably not taking something out there with you for the 40 or 50 minutes. You might, but I wasn't. And so I would really need to get dialed in and focused on getting that water and the electrolytes in between runs. It was time consuming and you had to really stay focused on it, because if you didn't, you could get dehydrated really quickly. But if that's where you were gonna be making up the time in between, you had to be focused on it. So we just had big water bottles and Gatorades and some Coke and stuff around to keep that going the entire time, anytime we were in the hotel room. Now, for those of you guys who are doing walking or one of the strength movements I mentioned, cap yourself at a certain period of time for each round. I would say 50 minutes, 50, is gonna be the average you'd see people completing the run in, which would mean just do it for that long and give yourself the same window of time for recovery between the runners are getting. Of course, people are doing this much faster, people are doing it a lot slower. But I would say to get through this and in a real way, of really giving yourself a good shot, I would cap it at 50 minutes per round. If you guys are doing those strength movements, this could be pull-ups, push-ups, burpees, squats, whatever we were talking about before, make sure you start really conservative in the beginning, doing small sets with little breaks in between. This is gonna give your body the best way to adjust and realize where you're at in terms of effort before it's too late. If you just go as hard as you can for 2, 3 rounds in a row, by that 4th round, you might be so smoked that you actually can't even move for a majority of the 50 minutes in the remaining rounds, which will just kind of feel like you got defeated in the challenge. So start very conservative and slow, get yourself at a pace that you feel like you can handle, and you'll know quickly if you're able to sustain that through the 2 days. All right, and if you guys are walking this challenge, don't think that just because you're not running, your body's not gonna get beat up. You should pay attention to that recovery, the stretching, just all that stuff I mentioned before, just as much as the runners are, to make sure you're walking efficiently. We all know how to walk, but for that many steps, it's gonna be a whole lot. I forget my final step count, but it's gonna be a whole lot. And you're gonna wanna make sure you did it well to not set yourself behind in training several weeks after this challenge. Guys, this challenge was probably one of the most rewarding things I ever did for myself, because I learned so much more about my mind than I did on a normal race day. That is because this really is made to mess with you. If you guys have followed me a while, you know how much I love David Goggins and I'm a huge fan of what he does. But the reason this challenge sticks out to me so much is that at your most unmotivated moments, you're forced to literally get out the door and go do something you don't feel like doing in the moment. And you do that 12 times in a row. When anything tough comes up in your life after that, you can reference watching yourself do it anyway, even when you didn't feel like you could. And I think that's really important for all of our minds, just to believe we can do a little bit more than we think. And don't forget to have fun with this challenge. Get a big poster board if you want. Check off every round each time you come in. Every time you finish those push-ups, finish your walk, come back in, check it off. And get a good support system. I've seen some really great videos of people's families doing bonfires, grilling, getting the food prepared, helping with outfit changes and stuff like that. And it makes you just feel like you're part of something bigger. You're actually having that support to get through something this tough. If you guys want to see how it went for me last year, click right over here. I did an entire video recap. I filmed the whole weekend, showed you every little bit. I'm sure there are tips in there as well. And if you do have any other questions, I'll of course get back to you in the comments. I'll see you guys in another video.